if you know somebody or you're going through a situation where, there is a large tax bill, or maybe there's a few years of return that haven't been filed, the most important thing to understand is that there's a solution. And it can be resolved. And you need to resolve it, because the one thing is not going to go away. Way too many people think that if they just ignore it, it will go away. I thought that for years. I'm like, well, maybe they'll just forget about me. The government's got a really good memory. They never forget about you. Understand that if it comes down to filing, for those people that haven't filed a return in many years, especially a lot of self-employed people that haven't filed returns in years, just understand the IRS, their number one thing is just get back into the system. Start filing your returns. If it's been more than 6 years since you filed a return, here's the great news. The IRS may not want all those over years. That couple that I mentioned earlier that went 15 years old and filed returns, they didn't want all 15 years. All they wanted was the last 6 years of returns. Okay. That's it. So we can actually work with the IRS to make sure that's all they want.
Hey there, and welcome to Money and You. I'm Michelle Perkins, your host. My search for more fulfilling work led me to career and business coaching, where I stumbled upon a game-changing discovery. Money issues often start with our mindset and habits. You see, our relationship with money is the key to overcoming those frustrating financial obstacles. As an entrepreneur, coach, and problem solver, I'm passionate about helping you create a great relationship with money. Because, turns out, that's the foundation for a limit-free life. Each week on Money and You, I speak with amazing guests about all things money, mindset, practical tips, and everything in between. We're here to give you new insights, education, and empowerment so money can be one of your favorite relationships. So join us for some lively conversations, and let's transform your financial life together. Hello, and welcome to another episode of the Money and You Show. I'm Michelle Perkins, your host. Very excited to be here. A little different studio today, which is fun. I get to sit in a comfy chair. And I have a great guest today, a topic that we haven't really discussed very much on this program. So I'm always excited to have all these diverse, unique conversations with different people, so you can really get a full, comprehensive money education when you listen to this show. Carlos Samaniego is the founder of Tax Debt Consultants, LLC. Carlos not only helps clients directly, but he also coaches and mentors other tax professionals around the country, including CPAs, EAs, and attorneys. His commitment to sharing his knowledge and expertise has helped countless professionals build successful careers in the tax industry. Carlos is a member of the National Association of Enrolled Agents and the American Society of Tax Problem Solvers. His dedication to helping clients from all walks of life has earned him the 2020 Tax Professional of the Year Award, and an animated short film was created to tell his story. He was also presented with the XP Award by the National Association of Experts, Writers, and Speakers. Carlos Samaniego's expertise does not stop there. He's been seen on many major news networks such as NBC, CBS, ABC, and USA Today, where he shared his insights on tax matters. He's also made appearances on radio stations, news stations across the country, providing valuable advice to listeners, and we are super thrilled that Carlos is here today on the Money and You Show. So, Carlos, welcome.
Thank you. Thank you for having me. Man, I was actually impressed with all those things. I hope I live up to the introduction.
Well, and I didn't finish. I feel badly. I left out so much great information in your bio, but it was so long, and I wanted to get us going here to talk. So,
you realize over time, it's just like, wow, there's a lot to say about this topic right now.
Yeah, there is, and there always is. For one thing, I didn't even think about the fact that we're in tax season. Part of why I didn't think about it was because LA County has a little bit of an extension going on here because of the fires. So I put it out of my head. Now I'm realizing, oh my gosh, it's tax time for everybody else. So, Carlos, let's begin at the beginning with why and how you got into this work and became so, invested in it.
Michelle, it's interesting. I got in this work not because of getting into the world of fighting the IRS for a living. You don't wake up, or at least as a teenage kid, you don't kind of have that dream. I have a teenage daughter getting ready from graduating from high school, and I'm pretty sure she's not dreaming about, going out and fighting the IRS for a living. But mine kind of happened because I took some really bad tax advice from the person that you shouldn't be taking tax advice from. And what I love about your show is that you educate people, right, on making the smart moves with your financial life. And it all started with me. I started working as an EMT paramedic back at a very young age, back in my late teens, early 20s. And I was a paramedic, kind of driving in. You see the ambulances driving around, right? Well, I ended up taking some advice from the older guy who happened to be probably in his early 20s. And I was doing a whole bunch of overtime, and he had actually told me, Carlos, why are you working so much overtime? And I had told him, just trying to make some extra money. He's like, hey, here's a little tip. Just go to HR, tell them to claim exempt on your taxes, claim 10 exemptions, and they won't take any taxes out of your paychecks. So, and literally, I took that advice, Michelle. And when I took that advice, what ended up happening, I ended up getting this huge paycheck because no taxes were taken out. And that was great until it was time for tax filing season, kind of like what we are right now. I ended up filing or preparing those returns that ended up having this huge tax bill. And because I had a huge tax bill, I never filed the return. It's just, I'm like, I don't know how to pay that bill, so I didn't file the return. Well, things really didn't change the following year because I never changed or updated my paycheck stub and ended up having another huge tax bill. And then next thing you know, I didn't file the returns the following years. And here's what happened, Michelle. I literally went 8 years not filing my taxes, and ended up having a huge IRS bill and a state tax bill over those 8 years. That brought me to this world of being a non-filer. I kind of found out that you're not supposed to be doing that.
Yeah.
And and what was interesting is that things really didn't change. Eventually, I stopped stopped doing that work, and I wasn't no longer in the EMS industry doing that type of work, and ended up becoming a mortgage officer. Now I'm like in my mid 30s, and I ended up becoming a mortgage officer, working for Chase Manhattan Mortgage. And while I was doing that job, I ended up meeting a client that wanted to buy a house, and she came to visit me here in the city of Redlands. That's kind of where we're located, here in the city of Redlands. And I was pre-qualifying her for a house, and ended up having a very non-professional relationship in terms of I wanted to go on a date with her. Ended up asking her out to lunch, and a couple of years later, we actually ended up getting married. And we ended up getting married, and the interesting part about that is that when we got married, I still had this tax problem looming behind me. And I did the worst thing that no person should ever do. And to this day, I call it the scumbag move. I never told her I had not filed my taxes in 8+ years. I had this huge, almost 6-figure tax bill between the IRS and state, and we ended up getting married. And she she didn't know about it, but I had realized what I had done, and what I ended up doing is literally like a week or two after we ended up getting married, I started looking like, who can help me with this tax problem? And I ended up finding somebody local here. He was an enrolled agent in EA. And I remember going to Ernie, that was his name, telling Ernie about my situation. And I told him, I said, I don't know what to do. And he sat down. He said, Carlos, you're not a bad problem. You're not a bad person, but you made a stupid decision. And here's the best thing about this. We can fix this. And literally, Ernie, that night, it was Christmas Eve. I'll always remember that when I had this conversation with him. We sat down, and he kind of gave me the game plan of how he can fix this. And I literally went back to Liz. I sat down with Liz and my wife, and I told her, hey, I got something I needed to talk to you about. And we had this conversation, and I told her about this. And yes, she was pissed, as you would imagine. But she actually just asked me one question: "What are you going to do to fix it?" And we ended up. I told her about Ernie, and that Ernie was going to help me fix it. And flash forward 20 years now. This is 20 years now. Liz is sitting over on my left shoulder. We are the co-founders of Tax Debt Consultants. We ended up starting this company quite a few years ago, and our sole mission is to help people who have tax problems solve their tax problems. And here we are.
Wow. Well, I love that that's what you do. I mean, that is a huge service for people, and a lot of people don't know that exists.
Yeah.
And there are, I talk a lot on this show about the need for professional help, or the benefit of that. So not to be afraid to go seeking out financial help instead of sitting there in your house, like being scared and nervous and avoidant and all the things that most people do. Because even for something like this, there's help that exists. Now, I don't see a lot of, presence in terms of, if I'm on social media or if I'm listening to advertising or whatever, there aren't a lot of people telling you this exists. So I love that you're on the show and letting people know.
Yeah, I always say, I talk about it in my book. I wrote a book kind of telling my story about that, what happened in my life. It's called How to Make the IRS an Offer They Can't Refuse. And in the book, I talk about, the secret of owing taxes or not filing taxes, which a lot of people don't realize. There's over 11 million people a year that don't file their income taxes. That this secret that people live with is one of those secrets that people don't talk about. It's just, it's kind of it's a fear. I mean, Michelle, you don't wake up, thinking about going to your Easter dinner and sit at the table and tell your family members, "Oh yeah, I got $100,000 tax debt," or "I haven't filed my tax returns in 20 years, 15 years." And I get clients not filing returns in decades, literally, and they're, and they have this fear because they don't know who to go to. I didn't know when I was dealing with, well, who do you go to in regards to that? H&R Block doesn't deal with that type of a situation. So, once somebody knows that there's some type of help out there, they think that, maybe there's potential help. And the problem is that a lot of the help that's advertised on the radio, and I always say, people who have tax problems always recognize those ads on TV and radio, settle your debt for pennies. There are those ads out there, but the problem is a lot of those companies are literally scam companies or companies that just take advantage on the fear that people are living with. Right. So that's why I'm super jazzed to be able to do this type of work, because I really see the effect of how it can really bring somebody's life, some order back in somebody's life.
Mm-hmm. Yes. Well, okay. So I'd love to unpack a few things that you talked about. I mean, the first thing that I really think is important for people to know, because I hear this too, I didn't make any money this year, so I don't need to file. Or, I hear that all the time. It's like, no. So what exactly are the filing rules for people?
Right now, I think the one rule people get confused. The standard deduction right now is around $12,900. So basically, a really basic rule: if you make less than $12,000 at a job, as an example, in other words, you get a paycheck, you really may not have to file. But if you do file, if they did take money out of your paycheck, you'll probably end up getting a refund. So we always encourage everybody to file. If you were working in it and they were taking money out of your paycheck, file. It's just better to file than not to file. Mm-hmm. But the one that gets people in a lot of trouble is when they're doing any type of self-employment work. Mm-hmm. And we know it, especially nowadays, it's called gig work. Uber, Lyft, the grocery delivery. There's a lot of people that do that type of work. And a lot of times they don't, believe it or not, they don't realize, oh, I'm supposed to report that income, mm-hmm. or they get a 1099 for the first time ever. They don't even know what this is, right?
Right.
So they're kind of confused. How does this thing work? And they're kind of shocked when they go file their tax return, how big their tax bill is, because no one really explained to them that when you're self-employed, you're getting all the income and you're supposed to be paying your own taxes on that income, which tends to get people in a lot of tax problems. And it's not typically that first year. It's because usually it happens over a few years, and then all of a sudden they're like, whoa, I didn't realize this was happening. Yeah. I got an Uber driver. He made almost $70,000 in Uber income. And you start to realize is that's a lot of taxes on that kind of income. Yeah. So that's the key thing to remember when it comes down to the filing requirements. It's just, I honestly think just if you're earning income, file the return. It's better to file the return than the IRS to come back 5, 10, 15, 20. And they do. The IRS never finds you the year after or 2 years after. It's always 3 or 4 years down the road that they're asking for this information.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And that's when you can't remember where you put it and all that good stuff. Yeah. Yeah. And you brought up the Uber example, but any kind of self-employment too. If you want to look ahead, not only at the idea that you need to file your return and report that income, but there are probably a lot of deductions through self-employment too, that if you're not even thinking this way, you're not taking advantage of either.
Absolutely. I tend to work with a lot of people, real estate professionals, in my area. And a lot of times they'll come in here, especially if they're newer real estate agents, they'll just bring me all their commission income. Well, this is what I made. And I'm like, well, what about your expenses? Mm-hmm. And they're like, what do you mean? I mean, the expenses, you had to go through licensing, you had your advertising, social media expenses, your driving expenses. Did you keep track of all this stuff? Because every dollar of expenses is going to reduce your taxable income. So we need to make sure that we actually, reduce your taxable income. And a lot of times it's a big aha for them. I do a lot of talks for a lot of real estate offices where I just come in for their newer agents to sit down like, okay, this is what you need to keep track of over the next year so you can actually write this stuff off.
Right. Yeah. Kind of amazing to me that new realtors wouldn't have that, in their line of focus, but that's very interesting. Yeah. Yeah. There's, like everything with money, we talk about this all the time. People they don't know, and it's not their fault they don't know because we don't have any real financial education out there. So this is really important stuff. And, one of the things too that's come up is, I talk to people about these days, there's so many investment platforms for one thing, and people are getting statements from Acorn and from Robinhood and from, I'm thinking younger people, but they don't realize that those, there's potentially taxable income in there.
Michelle, I am so glad you brought that up because I'm typically, come April, it's actually in the next couple of weeks, I end up going a lot of major television networks just talking about the tax season. And this is the one thing I always bring up when I do that talk. And you're 100% right. Is that all these different investment platforms and even employers and different entities that you may be earning money on, back in the day, Michelle, we're old enough to remember that, a lot of times we waited for all the W-2s and 1099s to show up in your mailbox and you collect all that information and you would actually go give it to your tax person.
Right.
Well, nowadays, almost everything comes via email. It's typically an email notice to you. Your 2024 tax document is available. And if we're not paying attention to your email, and I get hundreds of email every day, and it might just get lost in there, that you don't go download that information, and then you go file your tax returns with what you did have, and then all of a sudden you're getting a nice little audit notice from the IRS that you forgot to include your Robinhood account or your cryptocurrency account that they now get. So I always tell people, double check, go into your email, go to all the accounts that you know about, go double check. It's just because it's one of the simplest things to prevent an audit. Mm-hmm. Just report all the income the way it's being reported to you. And because of all these documents going to email, you may not see it. And a lot of times I'll catch my clients, they'll come in, they'll bring me everything. And because I've done the returns, or our office has done the returns for the last couple of years, I'm like, okay, you forgot this, this, and this. They're like, oh, I totally forgot about that. So I'm so glad that you brought that up.
Yeah, yeah. No, it's an interesting time. I think I mean, I guess it's obvious, but it does feel complicated now. It was simple when everything came to your mailbox and you collected the paper in a file. And even I lose track of things too. I have to sit there and think and go through my emails and yeah, I see them too. I just think, oh, I'll go back to that later. And sometimes it's probably a good idea to have some kind of a folder in your email inbox that is just for tax documents.
Exactly. Yeah, especially right now. I just read an article this morning. What's kind of very interesting is obviously there's a lot of government changes happening right now.
Right.
Administration, they're laying off a lot of people. They're downsizing. They're trying to, specifically the IRS. They just let go 6,700 people a couple of weeks ago. And now they're saying that they're going to let go another 20,000. So this is going to cause a lot of disruption in terms of, one, like picking up the phone, calling the IRS is going to be really tough. Mm-hmm. We have a hard time, and we have. I got a board here with all these special numbers, and we're having challenges getting through. Wow. So let alone a consumer person trying to, regular taxpayer trying to get through to the IRS. Mm-hmm. And the article that I read this morning is that people are actually saying, I'm not going to file my tax returns this year because the government's going to wipe out the IRS and we're not going to have to pay taxes. I got to let people know right now, to your listeners, is that yes, there's going to be some major changes. Yes, there's going to be some upgrades to the IRS, but they're not going to forget about your tax bill. You're still required. There's been no rule that you don't have to file a tax return. And the last thing you want to do is not file a return thinking that you might not have to because of the changes that are happening. I always tell people, changes at the government level can take years, literally. They're coming after your bank account only takes weeks, if not at longest a couple of months, if you're not paying your taxes or you're not filing your returns. So, yeah.
Thank you for bringing that up. I was thinking the same thing. I'm like, people's perception of what's going on is going to lead them. I mean, if you just look at a bunch of headlines, it's going to lead you to think, oh, nobody's going to notice if I don't file this year because everything's being so downsized. But yeah, thank you for saying that because that is.
No, yeah, especially because they're really pushing, and this is something the IRS has been talking about for years, is pushing more AI into finding tax cheats, to finding non-filers, to really matching up people's income. I honestly think they're going to get caught faster because of AI, because it's not going to be an actual physical person having to analyze all this stuff. They're going to push a button that's going to say, hey, tell me all the non-filers in the city of Redlands that we know of, and then it's just going to be much faster to go after those people. And those are people that really are near and dear to my heart, because I was a non-filer for 8 years. Yeah. And what a non-filer is somebody that's got more than 2 years of not filing their tax returns. It's just, I think right now is the best time ever to get back into the system, because a lot of times these people have been out of it for so long, they don't know how to get back in or are afraid to get back in. I think now is the best time. Now, while there's a lot of confusion going on with the IRS, there's not as many collection people, kind of just slip back into the system and do it voluntarily. So down the road, when their computers get really efficient in finding people, you're not one of the people that they snag because you've been trying to avoid the non-filing.
Well, that's all very interesting to me. So that's the way you see it going. It just not somehow falling apart, but actually just leaning into AI more. That's
just going to be a lot more automated. We're kind of upset. The people in our industry, that basically handle tax problems, we're upset because them getting rid of the people it makes it hard. A lot of times, and I'll give you a classic example. This is just somebody pretty recently. Somebody sold their house 5 years ago. They sold their house for like $800,000. Obviously, when you sell a house, you don't get the entire, unless your house is completely paid off, and theirs wasn't. You didn't earn $800,000, right? There was mortgages that had to be paid, real estate agents paid, all kinds of costs associated. So they made a little bit of money on there. Well, they filed a return, and all the IRS saw is that they sold a house for $800,000. So the IRS literally gave them a $200,000 plus tax bill, a huge tax bill, which is easily fixable because it's 100% incorrect. They didn't get $800,000. So normally we can just pick up the phone and just call the IRS and have that conversation, give them the updated forms, and it's done.
Right.
Now we're in the process, because we can't get a hold of somebody, we literally got to file appeals paperwork. This might end up having to go to tax court. It just becomes a lot longer process. And them getting rid of these people, we're not going to be able to get somebody on the phone. We're going to have to go through this longer process to deal with it, because we're just getting automated notices. Hey, this is what happened. You have to deal with this automated. And a lot of times things can't just, we all know that. It's so much easier when you're on that phone calling a government agency. Just give me somebody on the phone. Yeah, I just need to talk to somebody. And that's not going to be the reality anymore. It's just not.
Yeah, that's going to be hard all over the different government agencies that we deal with. And you're right. There is, and I've dealt with IRS folks, and I can't imagine, as scary as the IRS can be, I have dealt with them in a nice way and had issues resolved. And yeah, I kind of can't imagine not having people to actually tell your problems.
That makes a big difference. It really
does. Makes a huge difference. So we'll see. I guess we could. Yeah, that's a whole topic area that I don't want to make the whole show about that, but thank you for bringing that up, because I do think, it's just the mystery around everything, and then people make their own assumptions about how things are going to work and what the way they should operate. So it's really good to have somebody like you. And I loved your advice about getting in now. If you haven't been filing, now is a great time to slip in, like you said, and that's really smart. Let's go back to kind of because the show is so much about your relationship with money. You're not alone, obviously, in, having a money issue that's sort of like under the surface and, you're not dealing with it. Or maybe not dealing with it for a while, and then you're carrying around the burden of I am dealing with it, and it's a big deal. And the conversations that maybe you didn't have with your wife back then, because that's also common. I hear these stories a lot. And, people are embarrassed. They feel shame around, the mistake they made. I mean, it was an innocent mistake. You listened to a guy who sounded like he knew what he was doing. We do this all the time with money. And some of the people who do know what they are doing don't always lead us down the right path either, because, either they're going to benefit from whatever they tell us to do or whatever. I mean, money's tricky that way. So I'd love to hear kind of some of what was going on, some advice around that for people.
Doing this type of work, we actually get a lot of couples that do come to us. Mm-hmm. And a lot of times, it's not necessarily the spouse that has the tax problem. It's typically the spouse that doesn't have the tax problem that wants to get it fixed, because, when you have a tax issue, it affects not only the entire relationship, but what a lot of people, and I didn't realize it at the time, when you marry somebody that has that, or you're bringing that problem to the relationship, the amount of stress and anxiety, and doing this show is that most relationships will end because of a financial issue. Mm-hmm. It's probably the number one cause of most divorces. And, a lot of times people say, well, Carlos, why didn't you tell your, at the time fiance or even girlfriend that you had this issue going on? And, unfortunately, it was I was afraid. I was afraid that she would leave me because, I was this irresponsible adult who made this stupid decision, and that she would just leave the relationship. And I would imagine there's many spouses, male and female, mm-hmm. Depending on who's got the problem, they all think the same thing, right? What are they going to think of me? They're going to think less of me because of this problem. Fortunately for me, I married somebody who did not kind of think less of me and just said, hey, how can we fix this problem? Mm-hmm. And it's tough. I just had somebody in here last week, literally her husband was hospitalized because of anxiety and stress. He's in the hospital for it. And when she came in, she came in with her sister-in-law, and she had found a duffel bag full of unopened IRS notices.
Whoa.
He had no idea that the husband was going through this. As far as she knew, all their taxes were always on time, were filed, and they hadn't been filed in years. And she found this, and now she started to understand, because she couldn't understand what was going on with her husband. Just there was some issues going on, and he was in the hospital. But obviously, opening this up, she was in here crying. I mean, she had to bring somebody to speak because she didn't know what to do, or where do you even start in this type of a situation. So it's a lot. A lot of times I keep tissue here because I feel more like a counselor, a relationship counselor half the time, is because these problems just affect all areas of their life. I have a colleague who does this type of work in Texas. He had a doctor that was dealing with a huge 6-figure tax problem, committed suicide. And it's just, money is a tricky thing. And I'm pretty sure you've heard many stories about it. And this topic, there's a lot to unwind here.
Yeah, thank you. It is a tricky thing. That's a great way to describe it, because on the one hand, we can't not think about it. We can't not, it's just built into our society, like it or not. It's how we exchange for what we need. And so we have to think about it. We have to be, but it causes a tremendous amount of stress, which when I say that, I kind of hate saying that because it's true. But on the other hand, that is more in our control than I think we realize. A lot of the stress is a result of choices or decisions we make, either with poor information or, with poor timing. Maybe we just waited too long, which is sort of what you're describing.
That's what I did. I waited too long. It's snowball. A small financial problem is easy to fix, but when you wait too long, it just snowballs into this monstrous snowball that's going to wipe you out. And you want to catch it. You want to catch it when it's snowball.
That's such a good analogy. And it's just like anything with relationships. I mean, things, have a way of snowballing, that can be anything. That can be your health. I mean, if you're not taking care of yourself, it can be, but money falls in that category. And yet we don't treat it that way. I mean, we treat it as if we can just sort of put it off and think about it tomorrow. And years go by and we're still thinking about it tomorrow. So, and it's very interesting to me, the couple situation where one person in the couple really has no idea what's going on. I mean, when you don't know if your taxes have been filed or not, to me, partly because I'm sort of the in-charge person in my house, so that it's sort of unimaginable to me that I would not know if my taxes were filed. So,
Michelle, I'm actually more in shock how much I see more and more of that. It's usually husband handles it or my spouse handles it. I have no idea. They just have no clue. And the problem, one of the first cases I ever had was quite a few years ago. The elderly couple comes in and the wife comes in and says, "Hey, I need to file my taxes because my husband normally handles it." And anytime somebody comes to me with that, I'm like, okay, so is it just the 1 year? And they're like, oh no, it's 2 years. And the minute I always hear, it's more than a year, I'm like, you know what? Maybe we should do an investigation of your IRS records just to make sure that we're covering everything. And she kind of, okay, yeah. And she kind of explained that husband handles everything. And for me, that's almost kind of a trigger word. Okay, what's going on here? So by the time we filed our power of attorney and got all her internal records, 15 years of unfiled tax returns,
wow.
And she was just blown away. So we dealt with this, and here's the crazy part of the 15 years of unfiled returns. Luckily for her, she didn't have a huge tax problem. She had a huge filing problem, but not a tax problem because of the 15 years. If I remember correctly, it's been a while. 12 years were refunds on average of $4,000 to $6,000 per year.
Wow.
And the way the IRS works, you got 3 years to file a return to get your refunds. Every year beyond that, you've lost. So they lost all these refunds because of the not filing. So
Wow.
yeah, so it's just one of those things is that couples really need to be kind of in the know of what's especially when it comes down to taxes. Because when it comes down to taxes, you are when you sign the return, you are ultimately responsible for those joint returns. I had another situation. This was Friday. Somebody said, we just got my divorce final. The judge said that my husband is responsible for 50% my husband is responsible for the tax bill and I'm not. Well, I'm like, well, that's great for the judge to say that, but the IRS could care less what the judge says. You are 100% still responsible for that tax stamp. And the IRS will continue to attempt to collect. They don't care what the judge says about that. Now, if the spouse doesn't pay that tax bill, if you want to take them back to court and sue them for that, that's up to you. But the IRS could care less what the judge says when it comes down to that money.
Wow, that's interesting too. Yeah, there's so much here. So first off, at this point, talking to people for this many years around money, and if you aren't discussing your finances with your partner, you just have to. I don't know what else to say about it. It's not going to go well if you continue that pattern. For a majority of people, for some, sure, but and at some point, if that person is not with you anymore, one way or another, you don't even know how to operate. So I can't.
That's a great example, yeah, and that happens. The other spouse is gone. Unfortunately, they pass or they're divorced, and now you're dealing with that, and then you got to figure it out, and it's just
Yeah, that's exactly right. So I think, for anybody listening who doesn't know what's going on or is the one taking care of everything and knows their partner doesn't know what's going on. That's not fair to the other person either, because you could be gone and then your partner is left with a lot of questions. So I think, that is incredibly important to have the conversations, no matter how hard they are. There are some conversations that are hard. That's
They are. I remember when I finally had to kind of sit down with my wife and tell her what was going on. We'd only been married a short time, and I was terrified.
Yeah.
Because either she was going to leave me, or she was going to. Well, I wasn't even thinking she was going to understand and just move forward. Yeah. I thought she was going to just leave me after being married for a couple of months there. So, fortunately for me. She now runs this place.
Yeah, no, that is a great, hopeful story. But it did take you. You didn't wait that long. If you waited a couple more years, I don't know.
Yeah. It's just now you're living. Yeah.
So I want to. There are a couple other things that you said that I wanted to go back to. But so okay, put yourself, because unfortunately we don't have too much more time. If you put yourself in the position of somebody kind of going through these issues and having a problem, what can you maybe summarize some of the solutions that you can bring to people?
Yeah, absolutely. If you know somebody or you're going through a situation where, there is a large tax bill, or maybe there's a few years of return that haven't been filed, the most important thing to understand is that there's a solution. And it can be resolved, and you need to resolve it, because the one thing is not going to go away. Way too many people think that if they just ignore it, it will go away. I thought that for years. I'm like, well, maybe they'll just forget about me. The government's got a really good memory. They never forget about you. Understand that if it comes down to filing, for those people that haven't filed a return in many years, especially a lot of self-employed people that haven't filed returns in years, just understand the IRS. Their number one thing is just get back into the system. Start filing your returns. If it's been more than 6 years since you filed a return, here's the great news. The IRS may not want all those older years. That couple that I mentioned earlier that went 15 years old and filed returns, they didn't want all 15 years. All they wanted was the last 6 years of returns. Okay. That's it. So we can actually work with the IRS to make sure that's all they want. If it's a tax bill that you owe, you have this large tax bill. The IRS has got basically three major ones that they can work with you. If you got a tax bill you can't afford, they can put you in an installment agreement. You just got to be really careful with an installment agreement because the IRS will like to give you an installment agreement sometimes you can't afford. And if that's the case, you definitely want to speak to a person like me, where we can get an affordable installment agreement for you. The other option is if that tax bill is so big and you just no way you're going to be able to pay for it. I was just talking right now to an 83-year-old senior that had a $140,000 tax bill that she can't afford. Her husband passed away not too long ago, who was self-employed, left this big tax bill. Now she's got to deal with it. The IRS does have a program that says, hey, you have no ability to pay us, so we're not even going to bother collecting on this debt. It's called a currently not collectible. That's one option. And then there's an option out there, too, that the IRS sometimes will negotiate that debt. I just had one that just got approved recently. Taxpayer out in the Midwest owed $130-something thousand, and we just settled it for just under $3,500. Wow. So those programs exist. But the only way to find out if you qualify for any of these programs, you need to talk to somebody that specializes in handling these types of problems. Not every tax person deals with the IRS. A lot of them just kind of prepare taxes. Mm-hmm. But we look at your finances, we look at the tax issues going on, and you look at your finances and see what's available out there. And the most important thing to know is that there is help. That's the biggest thing. For me, when I was going through my problems, is just knowing that there's actually people that specialize in this is a big one. Because if they can specialize in this, that means you can get help for the problem that you're dealing with. Because we know that these problems create health problems. You don't sleep. All you got is nonstop anxiety and stress over this. You're afraid to answer your phone. You're afraid to go to your mail because you don't know what you're going to get in the mailbox. So there's just a lot of undue health and stress associated with these types of problems.
Yes, and that affects all aspects of your life. I mean, can you do a great job at work when you feel that way? Not really. So, yeah. Carlos, thank you so much. You have such a wealth of information and you're helping people in such an important way. So can you tell us again about your book, how to find it, and how to find you?
Yeah, I wrote a book. It's called How to Make the IRS an Offer They Can't Refuse. There you go. That's the book. And I offer it for free. If you go to taxdebtbook.com, you can actually get this book for free, the PDF version of the book. If you want to get the physical book, it's on Amazon. You can pick it up there. That's the best way of getting my contact information. You can go to my website too, taxdebtconsultant.com. All my contact information is there. But, it's just, I want to kind of take the time to thank you for bringing me on this platform. I just, the more I can get the word out there that let people know that there's help for them. Literally, we're saving like one family at a time, resolving their taxes. That we really are.
Thank you. And if people just have questions, I haven't been filing my taxes. I need a good tax account. What are the characteristics of a good tax account? Are you available for these kinds of questions?
Absolutely. 100%.
Okay.
100%. Just head over to my website, Tax Debt Consultant. My email's on there. Just shoot me a message. I'll be more than happy to help out.
Okay. Well, Thank you again. I can't tell you how much I appreciate you being here. And, and just, you have such a good energy and clearly a good heart in what you're doing, which I think it really adds to the experience of getting out of the stress and all of that. So.
Thank you. No, I appreciate it. And I know my wife, she appreciates it. And, and if you guys reach out, you're getting either one of us. So
we're nice. Yeah. Okay. And you work all over the country.
All over, it's getting to the point all over the world. We're literally helping somebody in Hong Kong. The state of California came after some taxes from him. So yeah. So it doesn't matter where you are in the world, we can help you with your tax problem.
Okay. All right. Well, again, thank you so much for joining us today. And listeners, thank you for listening in. And I'll put everything in the show notes as far as how you can contact Carlos. And please, listen to what we're saying here. Don't pretend that you don't need to think about your taxes, file your taxes, pay your taxes, and there is help out there if that is a struggle for you. So thank you again, and we so appreciate you listening to the Money and You Show. If you like the show, please share it, rate and review it, and on whatever your favorite podcast platform is, and that would really help us to bring great guests like Carlos on the show in the future. So thank you so much. We'll see you next week.